feel like this is a new Lakers season where it's like, oh, we're running sets now.
So this is it's very opportune that you would say that. It's very apt because in the previous episode we were talking about the highlights of our summer. One of the highlights of my summer, I saw the GOAT.
You saw Steph?
I did see Steph, but I saw the GOAT.
You saw
LeBron
James.
You see as well, this is also me bigging up my foresight, my vision. I was always thinking, December, might have been November last year, they announced that they were going to do 2 warm-up games at the O2 for the Olympics. And there's a lot of people that don't think. They don't think. They don't think, LeBron's coming towards the end of his career, Steph too, KD. This might be one last dance. They didn't think that. So tickets, I was in like the 6th row. I paid like £150 per ticket.
And we rinsed you for it
I
as
didn't
well.
know this.
Yeah.
No, we did. We rinsed him for it.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember this.
I did this a long time ago.
Man was spending big bucks.
Yeah. And then come about, 4 or 5 weeks out when the teams have been announced and you've got every man and his dog on this team, everyone's there. I could have sold my tickets for over $1,000. Genuinely, it was mad. So I got to see the real GOAT. And big up to him playing alongside his son in the NBA now. It's absolutely fantastic. Even I know.
Hey, don't.
I know. I don't
spoil a lovely moment.
Listen, I know people talk about nepotism and all that kind of stuff. I don't care. I do not care. Seeing someone line up next to their son on the ball court.
It's actually one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
It's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. But I had a question for you both. I was there watching 39-year-old grey old LeBron be the best.
Calm down, first of all.
Did you think I was going to say 39-year-old great old Angela?
No, I knew you wasn't. I didn't like all the adjectives.
Listen, you
old,
can take what you want from the
musty,
next
ash-
Broken down. Oh shit, my elbow.
You can also take what I'm about to say though, and then watching him be so elite, be the best player on that court amongst so many incredible athletes. It was just, I've seen LeBron play before, but seeing him this dominant at this stage in his career, unbelievable. So I've been fortunate to see a few like real elite, like all-timer athletes. This one just felt a little bit different. So my question is for you guys, it doesn't need to be sport. Have you ever seen someone perform or someone do something when you're like, oh yeah, they're different. I'm going to have to tell my kids and my grandkids and whoever wants to listen to it about this person because that was mad.
Yeah, Beyonce on the Renaissance tour.
Oh, yes. Well,
truly, and I went to the show. I didn't even know this because I bought tickets after I did like 50 shots of tequila, and I thought I was going to New Orleans, but I ended up, I checked my tickets and it was like, you're going to LA. But it was her birthday show that she added at the last minute, and so she was in her full like evolution of Beyonce, and I was like, I brought my sister who's not even really a fan like that, and she was like, she's like a living goddess. And I truly, like, I don't say that to be extra, like the first time I've ever seen her, and this is the only like pop diva I've really seen. But it was like beyond that, like when her voice started to ring through the whole stadium and it like goes through you. And I'm like, oh, she like has an actual divine gift with that voice that doesn't actually come through, I think, in studio recordings like it does there. It's like, it really was like, could almost bring a tear to your eye because you're just like, it's so larger than life.
Yeah.
And she's such a commanding presence and like perfection from head to toe that I was like, this is like different. Yeah.
I got 2.
Great choice.
One, 2012 Olympics, I got to watch Usain Bolt run one of his like the qualifying heats, and he ran hard for the first 20 meters. And then you could literally see he looked like he was jogging the whole way. I was like, wow, these guys must be really rubbish. He ran like 10.92.
Yeah.
He ran 9.92.
Yeah.
He ran 9.92 and he ran hard for 20 meters. He was checking his Instagram. He was like smiling to people. And I just remember being like, that shouldn't be how, because other guys are trying. You can see them trying. You can see him jogging and he's getting further away from them. And I was just like, I don't really have the language to, I don't have the life experiences to be able to contextualize this, but I just saw something that I don't think I'm ever going to see again.
He finished a race in the amount of time it took me to finish like this sentence.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I was very, very fortunate in 1990. Nelson and Winnie Mandela came to London, and I was there. And I was young enough that I didn't understand what I knew that he'd been released, but it wasn't so much what he said, it was the impact that he had, and to be honest, the impact that she had as well, because people forget that Winnie Mandela is like...
Gondrilla.
Winnie Mandela was tough enough to survive in the era that she lived in, and that I just remember being 5 and being like, I have never seen a group of adults be so still.
Yeah.
So it'd be those two.
That's good.
I'll add one more to that. I used to work for my uni's production, like live event production company, and as like a technical assistant, and we had Maya Angelou come and speak. So I was like setting up the production for her, and I remember being like, "This is wild!" Like, I'm like escorting Maya Angelou. Like, well, because this was like because it wasn't so much that like I was watching her do something that made me think, wow. It was just I was reflecting on like her life, and I was like, this is wild that I'm seeing this person. Whereas Beyonce was more like, in the moment, I was like, oh shit, like something is happening right now to me.
You know what's crazy, right? I'm not particularly religious, but I do feel like if there is a God, it would be Maya Angelou.
Oh yeah.
Genuine. It's really wild. It's really wild. There's something about just listening to her and taking her in. I'm just like, it really, really like softens me.
Yeah.
Like, and I can't really explain it other than that's like the closest thing that I can think of to what God would be like, which is, yeah. Big up Maya Angelou, man.
I should probably say welcome to another episode of Black in a Box. The world is told by black faces in white spaces. I am Angelo, always happy to be here. We've got my good friend, Alana, and Dominic, the married man. He just wants to... Notice how he always uses the ring hand. He's like, just so you know, I got married. And my wife is
glistening.
She's fantastic. And I send pictures to my friends all the time and be like, Lord of mercy.
I didn't tell you, we're actually in the midst of an actual professional model now as well.
And I've seen the shots.
No, not an actual model.
What's this?
We did some wedding modeling very recently.
I hate him so much.
I took a Friday off work.
Really?
Hitting the angles, yeah. He's coming soon. Man's a model.
All right, well,
You know,
watch our socials.
You know about nepotism, right? I don't know what the equivalent is to just having an absolutely stunningly beautiful wife, and you can just be part of that and just be kind of like 1B, but it still makes you look better.
They're like, just take a step.
Like a trophy husband?
Yeah, I guess so, but I'm not really the trophy. She's the trophy wife and the rest.
Wow.
Kept man.
That's the aim. That's the intention. That's the intention. One day. How are we doing, guys?
Yeah. So I'm glad that we've started with levity because we are now more than a year in to a year on from October the 7th, 2023. That is the date when Hamas attacked a music festival. According to the Israeli authorities, 1,139 people lost their lives that day and 8,730 were injured. In the ensuing year, these figures that I'm using are accurate as of October the 27th, 2024. In Gaza, 42,924 people have been confirmed as killed. Of those, 16,765 are children. 100,833 have been injured, and more than 10,000 have been missing. In the occupied West Bank, 760 people have been killed. 166 of those have been children, and 6,250 people in the occupied West Bank have been injured. Those of you that have followed us from the beginning know that we've talked about Israel, Palestine, the Middle East, going back years and years and years. We touched on this at the start of this latest conflict. It's been a topic that more than any has inflamed passions. There's a very real chance that it will decide the US election. I want to start with a quote from Ta-Nehisi Coates' new book, The Message, which is predictably fantastic. He was actually talking about being a child and hearing a story about an American football player in Sports Illustrated that took a hit and was turned into a quadriplegic. And he had been so used to there being a happy ending. And he has this quote that says, "Violence was the antagonist in a story with a happy ending. It could never win, could it? But all around me, violence actually was winning." And when I think about the situation that's happening over there, that's the thing that I keep coming back to, that violence seems to be winning. I want to ask some slightly different questions. I think the first question that I want to ask both of you is, how have you consumed what is happening over there, and have you switched off from it?
I've intentionally tried not to switch off this time. I've grappled with why, because I know when we've had these discussions before, whether it's black people being murdered, whether it was the pandemic and just the amount of people that were dying around us during the COVID pandemic, it always got to a point where I had to tune out. But it really feels like a historical crossroads that we're at right now. And I've seen some pretty horrifically graphic and disturbing things on Twitter. And I'm making myself look at it. And it has never lessened. The impact has never lessened. There's been a few times where we'll be watching the news at home and we're watching the coverage and the people that they choose to interview and the people whose opinions are being mainstreamed, and the amount of times, and this very, very rarely happens for anything that happens around the world, that one of us is pausing it and we're just having not even a discussion, but we just end up venting, because it's just the injustice and the horror that we're seeing on a daily basis. I was watching the news last week and the ITN were interviewing a bunch of Israeli settlers who were talking about going to this viewpoint and watching bombs being dropped on Gaza, taking their children, planning what they want to do with that land when they can move into it. And we just stopped and had a conversation. What if this was the other way around? Would ITN ever publish or platform these people? To be like, no, when we've finished killing all these Jewish people, come on. Like it's really getting to a point now where I struggle to actually find the words, because I've never seen anything like this before. I've never seen an injustice. I've never seen a horror committed on such a scale in broad daylight, and then also being justified by the people who I'm on a monthly basis giving money to. I'm at a loss. Could you say something, please?
I don't have much to add to that, because I'm kind of in the same boat, and because of that reason, I actually am not really keeping tabs on it at all, because it's kind of like, I feel powerless, quite frankly, like not very influential. And I feel like I knew a long time ago that, like, I know a bully when I see one. I know an imbalance of power and force when I see one. So, like, I was pretty quick to be like, I know what I think is right and wrong here. And all the people who have the power to fix this don't want to. And so I'm like, well, what's the point of consuming more of this? And maybe this, because in preparation for this, I was like, I went on the internet and I was like, what is the point of protesting? Does it do anything? Like, what is the point of sharing on social media? Like, is there any actual data to back up that influences any sort of change or politics or government? Thankfully, and I guess optimistically, I did get some results back that were like, yes, it's just slow. It like increases visibility, and then with enough pressure and enough like public support, then you can actually create change. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to be a bit more visible in my solidarity with Palestinians and a bit more active in protesting and just join some people who are way more organized than I could be about these things. But yeah, I haven't really been keeping in touch, to be honest, with everything.
I'll tell you what feels weird to me, and one of the things that I struggle with the most is that I've actually seen in my own social media, and I'm thinking about the people that I actually know, not people that are on my social media, my friends who are on my social media. There's not even any like debate or dialogue around this anymore. I think the consensus is this is terrible and this needs to end. And I don't know what the general public. I'd love to see the percentage of the general public that also thinks that, because it feels like that is the consensus now.
Yeah, I know.
Yet there is still nothing being done to stop it. So that this is why I feel so useless.
Exactly, because
And
I
helpless
feel,
now.
and it's not even that I feel like, oh, I need to do some convincing amongst my friends or anything like that. Although I do have friends and family who are pro-Israel and do the whole like, well, what about this and what about this attack? And I'm like, if I don't even know what to compare it to, but if
I don't think there needs to be a comparison though.
there doesn't need to be a comparison. Like, we all know what it is at this point. But so I looked up like recent data and things like that, or just like, what is the situation now? The latest news on Israel, Palestine, and the various conflicts now with the surrounding nations as well and groups as well. And it all comes down to the US, the UK, and France the governments are still supplying military support and funding to Israel. So it's not us, it's not the public.
So
It's our money.
Well, it's our money, but I'm like, what do we do? How do we divest from this legally? You can't.
So as of May 2024, Britons were most likely to say that they sympathise more with the Palestinian side at 29%, while 16% say they sympathise more with the Israelis. I'd be interested to see some more recent polling on that. I was inexorably drawn to 2020 when this started, and when I was thinking, how long will people care? Because, you know, how many times have we like derisively joked about the people that had their Black Square summer?
Yeah.
And that feeling of almost abandonment when, you know, the bodies of a few black people were being, you know, transmitted onto our screens, whichever ones we were looking at, and that feeling of frustration. And this is order of magnitudes greater. I think so. I'm like you, Dom. I've tried to stay as checked in as possible. I've also very much noted on my social medias people that are active and what it is that they're posting about. And if I was minded to look at the data, it is minority groups that have been the most active in keeping it alive. And one of the minority groups I'm really pleased in, and it's obviously a curated thing, it's people that I follow, but the white working class that I follow have been very, very active in posting, have been very clear. You know, my Irish friends have been very clear, for example, in calling it a genocide. They are not scared of being cancelled or anything like that. They have their own history with being occupied, being colonized. You know, it's called the occupied West Bank. I think one of the things that this year has done is it's made a lot of people, I think braver is the word that I'm going to use. I remember talking about this on this pod before, and there was a real hesitancy.
We were terrified.
When
were
we first started.
terrified.
And I think that one of the things that reading the message, and then just, I'm sorry, you can't see, again, just to give you some, more than half the homes in Gaza have been destroyed. 80% of the commercial facilities have been destroyed. 87% of school buildings, all of the universities. 17 of the 36 hospitals are described as partially functional. You can't see that, and then if it doesn't radicalize you, I think you're a little bit dead on the inside. And I've had arguments with people at the different jobs that I do. And I remember having some arguments in 2023 when it, you know, had just started, with people that were on the line of, you know, Israel has the right to defend itself. Gaza is Hamas are terrorists. We wouldn't accept it here. And I stopped talking to them because I think when people are so inflamed where the facts won't change their opinions, there's little value in continuing to talk to them. In terms of, I think there is this, I've always believed this as a student of history, that protest is really important. And I think that's why first of all, they've tried to criminalise it in the UK. And second of all, I think they want people to think that it doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
But what protest does, in a real dark and capitalistic way, is it spooks the shareholders.
Yeah.
And then when the shares take a dip, then action takes place. That's why they have tried to ban boycott, divestment. That's why they have tried to ban protest. But I would argue that, you know, there's that great song by the Manic Street Preachers, if you tolerate this, then your children will be next. I genuinely thought the first time we saw a hospital bombed, the first time we saw the remains of a child, that the international pressure would be so great. And instead it's like, what you need to understand about Hamas is that they are both this monolithic monster, but we're also really targeted, but we also can't get them, so we have to destroy the whole of Gaza. And I also want to be really clear. I find something very, very interesting, because there was a movement in the late 2000s, early 2010s. There were a number of high-profile discussions, debates, where the topic was anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. There has been nothing, I would argue, that has been more dangerous for Jewish people than the conflation of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. It is so easy to be critical of Israel and its allies, the UK. You know, I'm complicit with my tax money. The US. It is so easy for me to go, I am staunchly against what they are doing, without dipping into anti-Semitic tropes.
I don't like Jewish people. Yeah.
Because I don't, in my head, I do not see them. I know there are some Jews that are Zionists, but not all Zionists are Jews. I know some black people that are separationists, but not all blacks are separationists.
And I was in Israel for birthright, and not all Israelis are even Jewish, and not all Israelis are even religious.
But how many times have we just
I know,
gone
we've
in
talked
on
about
our own
this.
government, on our own country that we live in?
Exactly, yeah.
So the next question I wanted to ask is, is there any hope to be drawn from this situation? Or if you want to rephrase it, where do you find hope? If it's okay, will start on this one. There is this incredible reporter, Bisan Alda, who's on the ground, who has won awards. She won an award for her documentary titled "It's Bisan from Gaza, I'm Still Alive." All of the people on the ground who are making themselves targets because they think it is important to record it, that is what gives me hope. The fact that, as you said, Dom, that there is a consensus that this is wrong gives me hope. The fact that I know that by losing hope, I sort of passively accept what's going to happen gives me hope. That's what gives me hope. What about you two?
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I think I am very just sensitive to like external information anyway, from my own like mental health perspective. So I used to be way more optimistic, and then I moved to England and I became cynical as fuck.
that cold weather got you.
Everything's great and happiness is a choice and blah blah blah. And then now I'm like,
you stopped having all the E numbers in your cabbage.
Yeah.
And the sun, like when a cold day is like 75 degrees.
Like, oh, it's raining again. Okay.
That gray.
Yeah, so I'm gonna definitely take on that perspective, try to like reinvigorate that hope. I definitely have hope in the people who seem to almost tirelessly fight. Like, I know people are not tireless. We've talked about Kalechi on the podcast before, and I still like look at her posts and stuff, and she seems to have like an endless amount of energy for fight, and I'm like, good, because I don't. But there are other people out there who seem to have that energy, and I'm really grateful to those people and the people who continue to push me to like rally that energy also. So I guess I'm hopeful in that perspective. And I guess, and also just, oh God, it sounds so cheesy, but like life does go on, and you just do the best that you can with the tools that you have at the moment. And I think like taking some of the pressure off of myself to be like, I don't know what the answer is to change the world and make the world a better place. Like, get over yourself. Like, just do the best you can with the tools you have in the time that you have it, and that's the best that you can do.
Yeah, I think you're both spot on. I think the way that I look at it, and the main bit of hope that I've got, is that these things do usually end. Slavery ended. the Jewish Holocaust ended. Mm-hmm. I just hope this ends a hell of a lot sooner than I think it might do. Mm-hmm. That's it. It will end at some stage. I hope that there's Palestinians here to tell their story at the end of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I've got to say, I think.
Yeah, and I do think that we are trending, just based on like sort of sociological studies on younger generations becoming a bit more progressive. I know we just talked about like the alt-right and all of that stuff, but it does seem like we're trending to more diverse thought, more acceptance, more tolerance, and hopefully that will continue. But yeah.
I hope you're right.
Yeah. One thing I do have a question about actually is, just to bring it back, you were talking about like having the capacity to watch the news. And I think I know that divide and conquer is a very effective way to render powerful populations ineffective and powerless. And I think one of the things that I'm definitely susceptible to is like there seems to be so many issues to give a shit about that my mind is divided. And so I can't really focus on putting a lot of effort into one thing.
How can I care about anything when I know about everything? But, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's do what you can with what you can. I know there will be some people that will listen to this and go, how come you haven't mentioned Sudan? How come you haven't mentioned Ukraine? How come you haven't mentioned DRC? How come you haven't mentioned Yemen? And it goes back to, because time is finite. Me and also us caring about one thing does not lessen our caring about another thing. But also, as you say, it's about, okay, let's get some focus, because if we can get a breakthrough on one thing, maybe we can use that to flip a lot of things at once. I think to back to your question though, I do say to myself, because I think who has said to me about that there's too much going on, how can you expect me to care? And I heard that during 2020. And it's like, and so, understanding that, when it's not happening
now though, so at least.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because we got the plinth.
Yeah. I walk past it every day.
Thank you, King Charles. Now can you run me back my money?
Oh, your boy said that they're not apologising, didn't he, the other day?
Yeah.
What?
And then he got such a backlash. He was like, but I'm open to...
Wait, what?
Sorry, Keir Starmer will fit into any vessel you pour him into. That man has got no spine.
In X-Men 1, the film.
Oh my God. The general that disintegrates.
And that is actually a cause for hope, is that if the voices are loud enough, and it's like, you're going to lose. And not only are you going to lose, it's going to be... We're going to have Kemi. Kemi's going to be the next Prime Minister. That I will not care, because I won't be in the country anymore.
Oh yeah, you can't have a black woman in charge, can you? You're so see-through, you, Angela.
The funny thing is Kemi is so hated that even though you're trying to do that, I'm bulletproof.
I know.
Do you know how I know? Do you know how I know Kemi is not loved by the black
right.
community?
What?
I'm going to say something that's terrible, but it's been said to me by black women. Black women have said to me that that Kemi is not loved by the black community because she can't get into any black hairdresser.
I was about to say that.
And I can't wait. By the way, I cannot wait for her to claim that it's racism, because there's been all these reports that have come out saying that she's lazy. Like, this is a lazy black, and they're going to be like, but hold on, you've said that race doesn't exist and we shouldn't. You don't believe in the idea of the black community. Are you going to be at all conflicted when Kemi is the Prime Minister?
No, I'll rejoice. Because racism will have ended again.
Again. Yeah.
Thank you, King Charles.
I didn't know that racism could end so many times, but I've just got to be thankful every time.
When was the first time that you heard that racism ended? Was it Obama?
No, MLK.
That was one of them.
Yeah. Shout out, ending of racism in 68. Oh, no, sorry. No, that was the year that he was assassinated. Hold on. That's when racism... No, it started again.
Oh, yeah.
Racism is like Melrose Place, man. Just when you think he's dead, new season.
Oh, God.
That's dark. I don't know if I should make the pod that I just...
should.
That's so dark. Racism is back, starring Andrew Schultz.
We back.
The glass is clinking. We laugh because it's true.
Oh, yeah.
So I think just to put a bow on what we were saying, I hope and I pray for a free Palestine and a peaceful Middle East. And I do know from my studies in history that no lasting peace was ever got by dropping bombs. Nobody has ever bombed their way to peace. I think the principal actors know that, which makes me think that their goal has never been about peace. I hope all the Palestinian hostages, the thousands and thousands of Palestinian hostages, are released. I hope the Israeli hostages are also released. You don't have to love your neighbors, but if we can learn to tolerate them, maybe.
Yeah. Imagine seeing other people as also human.
Yeah.
Imagine. You were on Trisha this weekend, Angela.
I was. It was Trisha's last ever Talk TV appearance. They're pivoting to sport, and decided getting rid of their only serious journalist was a good thing. And on the last episode, we spent about 15 or 20 minutes talking about Chris Kaba. For those that don't know, Chris Kaba was a 24-year-old man that died at the hands of the police. The officer, Martin Blake, that shot him, was charged with murder and was found not guilty by a jury of his peers. After the not guilty verdicts came out, there was a media blitz that talked about how Chris Kaba was part of the notorious 6-7 gang, that he was due to go on trial for murder. A Talk TV contributor described him as a subhuman thug, and Trisha and I spoke about it, and it's been feral, hasn't it? The discussion of him, the stripping of his humanity as a way to justify his killing. Dan made a really great point in the chat, which I then used on Trisha, which was, if Chris Kaba did all that he was alleged to have done, he should be alive to have his day in court. And if that means that he then goes to prison, he should go to prison. The difficulty with this story is that we are obviously, well, not we, because we aren't the same age. I am obviously of an age now where I'm not a youth, and I have never been a youth that grew up in London. So I always can take the step back. And I said something on Trisha that I want to kind of go into a bit more depth now. I said that the stereotypes that we allow to exist, such as calling him a subhuman thug, the language of gangs, the way that black men or black children are kind of monstered, meant that in that moment, Chris Kaba's chances of survival were massively diminished. But I also said that, you know, those same stereotypes, you could argue, made him, you know, obviously the ultimate victim. And I said that I thought that it also suggested that Martin Blake himself was a victim. And I wanted to just give some context. That I don't mean that he's a victim because he's gone through this awful trauma. I mean that if you live alongside, and there are so many people in the UK like this, that who consume that kind of media, who must go around their daily lives just scared. Mm-hmm. They're scared of anybody with an accent. They're scared of anybody whose skin kind of fails that sort of Peter Griffin Family Guy test. You know, the viral meme. And when you live with fear, you don't make good decisions. And how do we break out of that? Because one thing that Trisha said is that when I heard about his past, it did change the way that I felt. And I said, but Trisha, you've just told me that you, who has 40 years of being on TV, has had dozens of interactions with the police. And that the only point it changes is when they recognize you, and then the whole atmosphere changes. Chris Kaba didn't have that. All of the other young black men that have died at the hands of the police don't have that. If you go into that situation with fear that you're facing a monster, his decision to shoot is perhaps the only decision that he has. We live in a world where there have been 2 reports 20 years apart that goes, the Met Police is really racist. And then 20 years later, they're like, yeah, in the remake, what if we just, yeah, it's still really racist. Like, Get Out Part 2, yeah, we're still really racist. But the problem is that we don't have, in this country, and we've said it a million bloody times on this podcast, we don't have a functional understanding of what racism is. And until we get to this understanding of it's all of those things, because when they said he was a notorious member of the 6-7 gang, I was like, oh, so he was a musician. Because 6-7 is a recording group. By that definition, Ashley Waters is a member of the So Solid gang. Like Method Man is a member of the Wu-Tang gang. And I'm not, and because you laugh, but and both of those groups have elements of criminality. But if you foreground the gang, and again, like Chris Kaba was alleged to have shot someone in the leg, was alleged to kind of be part of kind of criminality. Being a bad person doesn't
mean you should die.
And I worry. My friend works for the UN, and he watched the thing. He currently he works in Kenya, and I said, "Oh, what do you think?" He was like, "That interview that you just had is the reason that I'm no longer in the UK." So what do you mean? He said, because you spent the last 5 minutes kind of going from birth to death, looking at statistics, and said at the end, I hope if we can all agree with these statistics, we can agree that racism is a problem, then we can start thinking about it. And he's like, if you have to spend 5 minutes giving statistics to then hope that people will recognize that racism exists, you're in a lost country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, I felt with the Chris Kaba thing, I felt like an elder just being like, this is a tragedy of a young life wasted. I didn't feel like that could happen.
I've seen too many examples of police being able to apprehend people in similar circumstances to think that that was the only option that they're talking about here. And you've never been in a high stakes situation like that. So come on, stop it. We've seen this 1,000 times. And I don't care what Chris Kaba's background was. I really don't care, because the most important thing for me is hopefully one day I'm going to have children, and they're going to be little black children who might look like they're in the 6-7s. They might be wearing a hoodie one day and they look like a drug dealer. And think about the words I'm using right now. The issue is I've seen far too many. Thankfully, I've not had too many myself, but I've seen and heard far too many bad experiences, encounters that black people, black men in particular, but also black women, have had with the police. So even me, big old Uncle me now, who is a law-abiding citizen, if I am going to get into any kind of interaction with the police, I might be liable to do something that I wouldn't do another time. Maybe I'd run, depending on the circumstances.
Yeah.
I might do, because there's a panic that comes with dealing with the police that, fortunately for white people, they don't have to deal with it the same way that we do.
Even
they
have
don't.
to consider.
So I have to think, like, obviously you don't think rationally when you're really, really up against it. But in that moment, me running away, and there's lots of people out there that would just be like, comply, and if you comply, everything's going to be fine because you've not done anything. But I've seen too many instances where the person was innocent and they still ended up as a cadaver.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you can understand this when you can really, really logically think about this and understand it. I don't know how you can believe that what happened to Chris Kaba was lawful, that it was correct and that it should have happened. There is no way for me to think about it empathetically and land at that conclusion. It's wrong. It's wrong. We've got a system in which people should face accountability for the wrongs that they do. We do not allow the police to be the judge, jury, and executioner, apparently, unless it's a young black man.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, this is it. Like, there is a system in place and it's just not being used. And I don't know how you get people to empathize, because, like, I really don't know how you would get people within that system to empathize and to get out of that fear. Like, let's just say, so there obviously be the people who are like, it's not fear, I actually just don't like, I just hate people who are not white, or I hate black people, and so they want
Andrew Schultz here. Sorry.
But then there are people who maybe genuinely feel like have been embedded with a sense of fear about black people, and I don't know how you get out of that, because
we have it.
About black people,
the amount of times that I'm walking around and I see a guy in a hoodie and then I'm like, why was I pragging them? Because that's me. Mm-hmm. That's literally me half an hour ago. Yeah. I've got my hoodie right here. Mm-hmm. Am I scared of myself? Mm-hmm. Like, so I'm not surprised that other people are scared of them.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to take an undoing, maybe for a generation. I don't know.
Yeah. The one thing that, like, there's so many things to be annoyed. You got to pick the one and then just focus on that. Mine is, well, he's not perfect. He was not perfect. Like he was actually violent. And then I always go, okay, but what about Sheikh Kubai? And then they go, well, who was that? I go, yeah, okay. Sheikh Kubai was a black guy in Scotland, died at the hands of the police. Good man. Like, I think, like I've seen a play about him. Loved by the community that he lived in, popular, quiet guy. And if you look at the reporting after he died at the hands of the police, it was like he was a monster. He was massive. He was smaller than all but one of the arresting officers. This guy was like 5'9" and 12 stone. And so this was a perfect person. And he died at the hands of the police. The problem is there is never going to be a perfect victim. If I died at the hands of the police, the next day they'd be like, "Nah, this guy used to cheat at Super Mario Kart." You can't, no, because if a person's going to cheat at Super Mario Kart, and like there was a time where he took chicken out of the pot. And it was one of them Dutch pots, so it was jerk chicken as well. Like, there is no such thing as a perfect victim. There will never, ever be one, because your definitions of perfect are far too wrapped up in your initial impressions, and our initial impressions are far too tainted by the world we live in. But the world that Chris Kaba lived in is that his mum was 4 times more likely to die during childbirth when she had him. He was 4 times more likely to be expelled. He lived in a borough where there'd been a 55% real terms cut to social work, which if he was involved in gangs, social work would be involved. If there's been a 55% cut since 2010, he might have gone through the cracks. He was 4 times more likely to be in prison. He was 10 times more likely to be a victim of stop and search. And he's 4 times more likely to die in an incident with the police. That's from birth to his death. And so when people talk about racism and they kind of go, oh, you use the race card, that's the race card I'm talking about, just those statistics. And if we can't get to a place where we go, yeah, it's kind of messed up that his mum was more likely to die, that he's more likely to be expelled, that his exam results will improve in national examinations because they won't see his surname, that, oh, actually, when he gets into the world of work, Kaba, that's a foreign sounding surname, he's less likely to get the job. If we don't recognize all of that, then we can't, like, there's going to be more Chris Cabas, there's going to be more Mark Duggans, there's going to be more Rozelle Rodneys, there's going to be more Smiley Cultures, there's going to be more Daly and Atkinsons, and on it goes.
But they gave us a statue in Waterloo.
Thank you, King Charles. and they I think they might have issued a statement of regret as well with regards to slavery, and I'm going to take that regret and I'm going to use it to pay some of my bills. So,
But you know what this means?
What?
Racism's over again.
Racism is over. We did it,
guys. Nice
we
job.
did it.
Awesome job.
See you all next time, guys.
Peace.